All right. Hi, Catherine. Thank you so much for joining me on the Blush and Bloom podcast. So, for someone who's meeting for the very first time, how would you introduce yourself and the work that you do?
Hi, Gigi. It is so lovely to be here. Thank you very much for the welcome and invitation. My name is Katherine Maree Pace. I am an 11-time award winning business owner. I've lived in many different countries around the world: Denmark, America, the UK, Malta, China, and Australia. I love leading international teams of engineers and designers to invent new products specifically in health tech. And I am ambassador for female health improvements and awareness.
All right. Awesome. And as you already said, you founded and led multiple companies and raised international capital, which is very, very impressive. And you work with so many teams. What has been the driving force behind your journey as a founder and product leader?
One of the key words that came to mind when you sent me this question was integrity, because I've always been an inventor at heart. And as I've worked with different international teams, the driving force has really been the concept of integrity. Having integrity in the way that we manage people's data, in the way that we communicate a solution to people and empathize with the end user, integrity in the pricing models, integrity in the way that we treat teams. So I think curiosity is always a part of it, but I feel like the word integrity has been a major driving force in my ability to appropriately and successfully raise international capital as a woman, build, international successful teams, and bring very new and innovative products into market.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And also you mentioned about receiving so many awards. I think you said 11 times, which is so, so impressive. You've been recognized by TechCrunch, Disrupts, and TechStars, and many other platforms. So which milestone feels the most important or maybe the most meaningful to you so far?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question, Gigi. There's been so many moments, but the one that I have like a picture of me framed is me standing on a stage in front of 5,000 people keynoting at the Amazon Web Services Summit. And I think that was a key milestone because I was quite young at the time and I was female, and I was invited to keynote 2 weeks before the event. And it was because I was at a media event, and I think the CTO of Amazon Web Services at the time was asking different people about the way that we were using the Amazon Web Services tech stack. And because I have both an engineer's mind and a creative, empathetic mind, I'm able to very clearly explain to people why we use things and what we're doing. And I think he was really impressed in that media interview and was kind of like, would you be ready to keynote? And I think the biggest audience I'd ever spoken to up until that point was maybe like 100 people, 150. So 5,000 is very different. It's a 360-degree stage, but I absolutely loved it. And I loved it because at the time we were building your number one health and fitness app for children. And we were the first platform in the world to merge a smartwatch in a gaming environment. We were before Fitbit, before Garmin, and we were using technology in a very healthy way. And the audience was filled with not only engineers, but students. And I really enjoy the opportunity to translate concepts that often get stuck in the technology world or in the medical world because people say, oh, it's too complicated for you to understand. And if we continue with that sort of story, then we're not going to progress as a human species. So I love being that bridge of communication. So I think that was definitely a really cool highlight so far.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, so let's turn towards your personal story and your startup. So you live with endometriosis, and it's a condition that I'm happy is getting a lot of attention now that affects several women. So how has managing that experience influenced both your personal perspective and the companies that you've built?
Hindsight is a wonderful thing.
Mm.
I was diagnosed with endometriosis when I was 16. So it's almost 20 years ago. And I, at the time, definitely couldn't pronounce it, had no idea what this thing was,
Yeah.
and just assumed that everyone must have really bad period pain like me.
Mm.
And so I would be out for 2 weeks a month. I would be on the floor. I would have very heavy bleeds. By the age of 18, I'd already had 2 laparoscopy surgeries to remove the endometriosis, and then I was put on a Mirena IUD for the next 15 years. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it. I was very young and ambitious and creative, and I was just
Mhm.
like, "This thing, I'm just gonna, like, ignore it over there and, like, run at my life and my dreams." But ultimately, I got to a point where my body gave in, and I had a near fatal accident, and I had that because my body really gave up. It hadn't had a natural cycle. It didn't really even know how to be healthy, even though I was running 10Ks a day and eating, salmon, thinking I was doing the right thing as promoted on social media. And so after I had the near fatal accident and I decided to go totally clean and truly begin to understand what was happening with my body, that's when I had to convince my gynecologist to remove the IUD. And I went off all alcohol, I went off all caffeine and sugar. And I started doing experiments on my own body to understand what on earth was going on because I obviously didn't want that to ever happen again. And after that, um, today I have an incredibly beautiful cycle. I absolutely love it. I love my period. It's not painful at all. And I'm really happy that I've worked that out. But along the way in my career, I've had the ability to meet some of the world's best meditators, functional health medicine practitioners, dietitians, etc. And so, because of my innovator mindset and inventor mindset, I've sort of united a lot of the insights across many of the holistic and commercial practices to start bringing to market ways that women can easily take care of their own body within their own home. So ultimately, endometriosis was initially something that I totally ignored. Now it's something I deeply respect and invite other women to really deeply pay attention to because I haven't met a functional medicine practitioner who has not met a woman who just has hit a wall at 35 after ignoring it and trying to turn it off and turn off their hormones until that point. So, as a sort of fair warning, it's something that we should really respect much earlier on and pay attention to.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. And I also understand that your experience also shaped her for. So maybe you can talk about what you're building and how your experience has shaped why and the how behind it.
Yeah, thank you, Gigi. And I love the work that you're doing with cycle syncing for women and especially
Mhm.
looking at the Nigerian market. I think it's amazing. And I totally support what you're doing.
Thank you so
Um, yeah, no, thank you. It's so her for all about making sure that any woman who sees this brand, touches this brand, knows her for. That's it. I was like, "You need to understand her fall." So, do you know what her for is? Do you know how her fall works? And by that, I mean, like, your menstrual, follicular, ovulatory, and luteal phase. So
Mhm.
that's cool. If you know how to talk about your 4, that's great. But now let's go more in depthly, like, how many days should each of these phases be? What kinds of body signs should you acknowledge and see during those 4 phases? What kinds of foods should you be encouraged to eat during those phases? Exercise, the way your intimacy techniques should change over those 4 phases to bring out the best, most authentic, vibrant, magnetic woman you can possibly be. And so, yeah, I founded her for because I had looked at a lot of cycle syncing research and thought that much of it was very complicated, and overcomplicated, and I love keeping things very simple for people. And so I thought it was too complicated, so I decided to build an app for me,
Mhm.
and then I just started using it every day, and then my friends started asking me about it, and they started using it every day, and that's kind of where it was born from.
Awesome. And also, I think you already like the name is also self-explanatory because I was about to ask you like what does her for mean, but no, I think I get it now.
Yeah, it's just her for, because I feel like in industry, right, we always say, like, she's on her period. I'm like,
Yeah,
well, technically, you're always on your period. You're either just bleeding or you're not. And
yeah.
at the moment, we don't really have another way, to more just casually refer to it. And I was like, well, I think we should just talk about her for and the importance of her for.
Okay. So Part of her four is also cycle syncing and bioaligning. Bioaligning is new for me, so maybe we could
Yeah.
talk about this a little bit and then explore like how her four could be applied to, say, somebody who's completely new to cycle syncing or the entire concept behind her four.
Yeah, beautiful. So, the physiology of a man and a woman are inherently very different. Post industrial revolution, we have lived in this sort of 24-hour cycle, which is fueled by both alcohol and caffeine, really, from a play and a work standpoint. And this can work okay for the male body and the male physiology. And they really only need to worry about their circadian rhythm. And women have a circadian rhythm, which is the 24-hour cycle. But we also have an infradian rhythm, which talks to the four phases of her monthly menstrual cycle.
Mhm.
So when I refer to bioaligning, I am referring to learning to live your life in alignment with those four phases, but not only those four phases, like all of the elements of your female physiology that are inherently different to a man. Way that we think, left and right brain, heart, cadence, our breathing techniques. Like we are just a different body. Yes, there's many similarities because we're of the same species, humankind, but we have different physiology in many different ways. And at the moment, it's becoming the concept of four phases for a woman is mass commercialized, but it's not the only one. And so, for example, I'll give you one example, which is very unique about the Her4 platform. I am an avid meditator. I have been practicing for probably over 7 years now. And I was very interested in how a woman can make the most of her meditation practice in comparison to potentially a man. And so I commissioned for meditations that included binaural beats to be created that aligned with the brain frequency that we want a female to get into in each of her four phases. So, for example, in her follicular phase, you will feel naturally very creative. What's really cool is that when we start giving you tools that accentuate that creativity. And so I was only listening to it today because I'm in my follicular phase, moving into ovulatory, which is why I feel so glowy and I've got so much energy. And so I do my 5 minute, her four meditation for the follicular phase this morning, and
Mhm.
it puts me into the alpha state of being. And that really heightens my levels of creativity. And so bioaligning is me acknowledging that my body wants to be really creative today, and what tools can I do, what foods can I eat, what activities can I enjoy that really accentuate that creativity.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's very interesting. And I love the idea and the concept of working alongside your body and not just forcing it to do things. So this is very incredible work. I do have a
Yeah,
question
yeah.
around this because I think I was talking to Alicia or somebody else about cycle syncing and or maybe it was another doctor because we were just talking and then she was like, do you realize that not every woman feels particularly like glowy on their follicular phase, that it differs from woman to woman. So I wanted to ask you, like, does her four also factor in this for women who may not follow this? Does it uh platform adjust according to the woman's unique needs?
So I think the first question is first to understand what the stereotype is,
Yeah.
then to understand why you're potentially not at that stereotype. So if a woman doesn't feel glowy and heightened feelings of energy during the follicular and ovulatory phase, then
Mm.
I would definitely invite the woman to explore why that is. And so in the Her4 app, I have a very easy way for women to see what kinds of body signs will be showing that are common but not normal. So if
Mhm.
she's down or she's feeling anxious in those phases, for example, or she's getting like heightened acne and things like that, then she can very easily click onto that and understand what potentially is going wrong for her in her life at that time. Or wrong is maybe the right word. It's not optimal. It could be upgraded, and it provides a lot of different natural ways to be able to get to that, more stereotyped, ideal, glowy, energetic state. Because at ovulation and follicular, your estrogen is rising and your luteinizing hormone will rise to release the egg. And
Mm.
so in that state of being at healthy hormone levels, you will be happy and energetic and vibrant and very magnetic. And so if she's not there, her 4 app illustrates very easily symptoms that are common for some women, but not normal. And then it helps them understand the action they can take today in order to eradicate that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, that makes sense. The next question I have for you is I don't want to forget it because it's not necessarily the questions I listed here. So you mentioned that you were able to handle the symptoms you are having from endometriosis and you're successfully able to manage them. So let's say there's another woman who's also suffering from period cramps or endometriosis, and
Mhm.
she wants to understand how you were able to do it. Like we also understand that like this may vary from woman to woman and what works for you may not work for her, but it's nice to see somebody who actually like put in the work, experimented as much as she could to figure out what works for her body. So maybe you could share some tips around that.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned before, this is the work that I'm going to be releasing very soon is helping women acknowledge and learn how to heal their endometriosis symptoms
Mm,
naturally. Yes, I've done a lot of weird and wacky things. I've isolated
mm,
myself on the Maltese island for 4 weeks with no human contact in order to better understand how the female body responds. I've tried every at home, in home hormone testing kit from blood samples to urine samples to saliva samples. Like I really have had a crack at a range of things. And so I appreciate your acknowledgement there for the weird and wacky things I've done in order to help progress this industry for us. There's two first steps that I recognize for the woman. The first one is to acknowledge that she is in pain.
mm,
To take a moment and be like, your body is trying to speak to you through these symptoms. It's not broken. It's not angry, or maybe you do have feelings of anger that need to be worked through, but there is something that it's trying to communicate with you. And you need to sit with it for a minute and be like, hi, I'm here. Instead of me being like, you suck, you're broken, this is so annoying, this is such an
mm,
inconvenience, like, I don't want to have this. Instead of talking to yourself like that and really like almost hating on your female body, it's really trying to show you signs. And once you learn how to read those signs, you can heal. And so the first thing to do is to acknowledge that the body is trying to communicate with you and you to actually pick up the phone and be like, hi, let's have a conversation. The
mm,
second stage is to, as human beings, especially in a pharmaceutical driven world, we love to, um, you know, have these very big, complex words to broadly describe diseases like
yeah.
endometriosis or perimenopause, for example. And a lot of these words are getting a lot of hype right now. And these words go in phases over time if you look through history. So, one of the other things I did was I just stopped saying that I had endometriosis. And instead, I started looking at the symptoms individually. So, one of the first symptoms was like heavy cramping. A second symptom is heavy bleeding. Now,
Mm,
they are symptoms that get categorized under the umbrella of endometriosis. But ultimately, I was like, I'm not going to just heal endometriosis. It's like trying to build a house, but you build a whole house at once. No, you
mm,
start with the foundation and you start going, okay, now we're going to talk about the windows. Now we're going to talk about the walls. Now we're going to talk about the furniture. So you need to
mm,
break it down. So if we start with, for example, the cramping, the first thing, that I always look at is magnesium levels, and especially magnesium biglycinate. There are different types of magnesium that you can take. Magnesium biglycinate was the first supplement that I started taking to eliminate cramps, and it worked extremely well. But one of the other things I also then integrated was how I did my fitness. So
mm,
I was running 10Ks a day. And then all of a sudden I read a book that tells me that I shouldn't be running when I'm on my period. But, that kind of contradicts the Nike Just Do It campaigns that gets me everywhere. You're standing there as a girl being like, I'm confused. There's this like little period power book over here telling me I shouldn't run on my period, but I've got like all these athletes like promoting like just do it. So the second part was deciding, okay, on this period, I'm not going to run. The results were so immediate and so fast. Your body will respond so quickly. It's incredible when you give it the right antidote. And so I didn't run. And so I didn't run. I increased my magnesium and I rested, and the cramps reduced by like 80 to 90%. And then when my next cycle came through, I was still in the habit of always running. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I need the endorphins. I want to run. And within like 1 kilometer of running, I had severe cramps. And I realized, wow, like my lifestyle is actually not healthy for the female body. And it fully needs to change. And so what I've described there is just looking at cramps. So the
Mhm.
second stage is for the woman to start looking at individual symptoms and treating each of the individual symptoms in all and go, okay, I've dealt with the cramping. Now let's look at the heavy
Mhm.
bleeding. So now let's look at the brain fog. They have different cues and different things going on in your body. Whereas commercial medicine will kind of go, let's just turn the whole system off. And when you turn that whole system off, the symptoms that they don't go away, they're just sort of like hiding until you turn the system back on. And then you will have worse perimenopause, you will have worse menopause because you haven't dealt with the underlying issues for those symptoms.
That makes sense. Thank you so much for sharing those insights. Okay, this is very interesting. All right, so I love that you shared all those tips behind it, and I'm sure the listeners will also be curious because I'm also curious because this is wonderful that you've able to do all this research and it's working for you. So for building out her for, how have you been able to like balance this your experience and also scientific research to back said experience, and then you're able to communicate this to other women through your platform?
Balance. Interesting word. I often have KISS, keep it simple, stupid,
Mm,
written every. I look at the science and I go on PubMed and I understand what clinical trials have or have not been done in
mhm,
various areas. And then I also speak to women because I think there was one experience, for example, when I first started researching this space, I built a Miro board online and I sent it out to all my friends. And I was like, here are your 4 phases each month. Can you please put a post it note explaining what symptoms you have in each of those 4 phases? So they were all like adding post it notes here and there. And I was so astounded at all of the symptoms my friends that I see every day were having that I had no idea about. And
mhm.
secondly, I did not know that so many women were experiencing diarrhea as a symptom just before their period. And so I rang them and I was like, you have diarrhea? Like, I've never had that symptom. I didn't even know it was a PMS symptom. And so then I went on to Chat GPT and I was like, I'm curious what Chat thinks, like why diarrhea is a PMS symptom. And Chat responded and said, diarrhea is not a PMS symptom. And you have to understand that Chat GPT is providing information based on an accrual of information that's already on the internet. Most understanding of the female body is not yet published on the internet. To
Indeed.
be honest, it's not yet even discovered. So you have to look at science and then also acknowledge that in 50 years, we'll probably laugh at where we are today. And in that years, we're going to laugh even harder. And you know why? Because we laugh at where we were 100 years ago and
Mhm.
100 years before that. And if we think that we're going to progress slower, or we don't think it's going to be better, then you got to do an ego check, huh? Because like 100 now, like we are going to be so far forward. So
Mhm,
you've got to take where science is today with a slight grain of salt and be like,
mhm,
cool, this is where we're at. But we need to overlay many subjective stories and experiences. And so I am reading books, I am reading memoirs, I am speaking to women. I had a podcast, I interview specialists, and every day I am aggregating and amalgamating the information that is coming through all of those sources because women's health is so undiscovered. There are so many areas of it that are not properly investigated that,
mhm,
we weren't even included in clinical trials until the late 80s. And today, maybe 1 in 4 clinical trials females are included in, but they are definitely not testing stuff for each of the 4 phases, at which point we will have very different reactions to different drugs or inputs, for example.
mhm,
So, the way of balancing it is by ensuring that I give as much respect to one woman who says to me that she experiences a certain symptom as I do to a scientific study.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was beautifully answered. Thank you so much. Okay. So, all right. So you have users on the Her4 platform. So has there been a response or feedback that you received that made you so surprised or so excited about what you're building?
I think the feedback that I love the most that I often get in any of the platforms that I build is, wow, this is so simple.
Mm.
And that's my goal, is that user journeys and user experiences are so seamless, especially for women. We're so busy and we care so much about other people often before even ourselves. And so often we're not investing the right amount of time in ourselves. And so, especially for women who might have children or taking care of their parents or even having pets, or even just going through a career change. So I think I love when people do say to me, and the feedback that I get is like, wow, this is just so simple. Um, I've loved that. I've loved the feedback on the binaural beats and their uniqueness and the impact that they've had, especially when women have come and sat with their friends and practiced them at the same time. I do believe in collective consciousness and how that amplifies the results. I'm also very excited to move into a phase where I'm really starting to tailor programs for women dealing with endometriosis. And I am getting a lot of feedback in relation to that and requests for simple programs that allow people anytime, anywhere to be able to understand what their body is trying to say to them and at least trial different natural routes in order to heal their endometriosis.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay. That was a very wonderful response. Okay. Then next question I have for you is there, I think you already covered a couple of them from the previous responses to the question so far. But from your perspective, what myths and misconceptions about menstrual health still need to be broken? Because as you said earlier, and as you said earlier, just because it's common doesn't mean that it's normal.
Huh?
What are more examples of this?
Yeah, awesome. Also, would love to know what yours is. So I will ask you after I answer this question. I think the big one, common versus normal, was something I championed about a year ago. And I've seen that spread a lot more on the internet, which is really cool. The big one now, I think, is that having your period is annoying. It's painful. It's a irritation. It's not useful. I have the most incredible intuitive downloads when I'm on my period now. I have very heightened states of bliss. If I want to ask for something, it usually comes very quickly afterwards. My period is a beautiful time of reflection. Sit and I can learn about what happened and I can see what happened in my past month and what now needs to change in the next month in order for me to continue on my path in a heightened way. So the next one is for us to actually love love the bleed phase. But at this
Mhm.
moment in time, for example, even the tools that we're given when we bleed, take a pad, for example, or a tampon, many of them are coated in toxic substances that react poorly to menstrual blood. So ensuring that you use organic products. I'm absolutely obsessed with the Yuka app right now. I am scanning the barcodes of everything that touches my body, whether it's food, whether it's skincare, whether it's head care. I'm understanding, is this biologically aligned for me? Is it not an endocrine disruptor? So we really need to look at, even when women go, I'm on my period, and I'm going to have like all this junk food. I get it. You can still have sweets, but there are really like healthy ways to have sweets that allow you to go into these heightened states of being that feel amazing, that feel divine, that will tell you whether to go get job A or B, tell you whether to dump the guy or date the other girl. It'll tell you whether to move houses or move countries. We have an incredible sense of intuition. And your menstrual phase is sacred. And in previous ancient times, it has been totally like revered. And for whatever reason in the modern world today, we see it as an inconvenience. By women taking that approach, you are doing a disservice to yourself and the progress of women. That
Mm.
was a bit passionate. But I want to know what you think is a misconception.
I think the common misconception that I think I'm happy everybody's embracing now and more people are understanding is that pain doesn't because it's common doesn't mean that
Yeah,
it's
normal.
it's normal. Yeah, just because it's common, it doesn't mean that it's normal. And veganism also from the perspective of not just menstrual pain, but like pain in general. Like, this common saying that beauty is pain. And
Mm,
then I'm like, why does it have to be this way? Because like, for example, I remember as a young girl, like I want to get my braids done. And then it's like very painful depending on who's braiding it for you. And then
yeah,
I finally met a hairdresser who like was able to braid my hair. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was having a headache for the rest of the day. And then I started having braids more. And it's like, just because somebody has decided to inflict pain on you doesn't mean that you should let them. Even if
yeah.
they don't like necessarily like mean to, because I don't think the breeders have the intention of like killing you or something. So I feel like I don't really particularly have a straight answer for this, but I think that as a society, like we should be taught to question more, not just accept everything that's thrown at us. So that's basically like why should it be this way?
Beautiful. Yeah, I totally support you on that.
So I didn't directly answer the question because I'm still learning a lot of misconceptions as I go on the podcast. So I could say the ones I've learned from other speakers. Like I didn't know about pelvic that this was the most stunning for me because I thought that pelvic floor exams were only for pregnant women after they've had their child. I didn't know it was for any woman could probably have vaginal prolapse or is a
Mhm,
uterine prolapse. So I was
mhm.
like,
I know, and I think you taught me that as well, which I
yeah,
love, and that's I'm
it
all
was so
for
shocking.
us having these chats. Exactly. It's
Yeah.
phenomenal. And, ageism, sexism, racism, all of that's gotta be put to the side as
Mm,
women begin to have these conversations because the
yeah.
female body is so unique, and we need to have all of these cross conversations a lot more often so that we can educate each other because none of it's taught at school. None of it's taught when you go into the workplace. None of
Mm,
it's taught really when you have a child or a baby. So there's no like age association, like cult associate. It's like, hey, girls, if you have a vagina, let's have a chat about what. I remember my Nigerian friends in London. We had such great conversations because we just sit down and be like, right, what did you learn at school? How did you deal with it? Like, and then I'd be like, well, this is how we did it in like Australia at, my all girls Catholic white school. Like, how did you deal with it? And we would have these very open and frank conversations, and it was phenomenal. And one of them was a data scientist. And so we could have like very intellectual conversations about how how being female was being approached culturally and sexually all over the world. And so I love that you're doing the podcast. I love that you're building also a cycle syncing app specifically for the Nigerian community. I just think the more effort that we put in this space and the more we support each other, the better for all of us.
indeed, I agree 100%. I think another misconception I got was someone was questioning, she's a doctor. She was like, why do we call it sanitary pads? And I was like, I never really thought about it. Like, why is it sanitary? What's unsanitary about my period? And I was like,
Yeah.
I think that was Dr. Adana. Like when she asked that question, I was like, I haven't given it that much thought, but that's so I'm
Yeah.
happy that we're having these conversations and we're not questioning things because for the longest time having a period was something that you had to hide from. Like even when I was also talking about this with Dr. Adana, like I think she had a secondary education in Nigeria, so she understood. Like this always I think always is an international brand. They're very popular in Nigeria as well. So they would go to secondary schools to market and teach about menstrual care and stuff and also share some pads. And that was very important for me more than I realized because my mom didn't tell me that much about she was like she was happy for me and everything, but it's like, okay, you have your period. Here's this. You'll be fine. I'm happy for you. And she prayed and everything and she was so excited. But she didn't necessarily like teach me like what does this even mean and how will
Yeah.
this affect me for the rest of my life. So
And to be honest, she probably didn't know,
yeah.
and she's learning too. We're all learning together, all of us
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah. I think like I hope there's something like that is still happening, and maybe I think like other platforms are also doing this to educate in schools. But why I brought it up was like they would come to the school, and then it would be only the girls in the hall, and then all the guys would go to the class, and then as soon as we're leaving, we're all hiding the things in our pockets. Like, we don't want them to see the pads, we don't want them to see the pamphlets. And the boys are like, what was that about? And we're like, nothing, nothing, nothing.
Yeah, I agree. The next stage is like it should just be everyone in a room
Mm,
having learning and understanding.
yeah,
You've got a brother, I've got a brother, you
yeah.
have life partners, you're gonna live in the same household, like, let's understand each other.
Yeah, I agree. It will definitely like build more empathy around the way that men see periods and help them. Okay, like a girl is bleeding, they can actually like help and offer support.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's important that we involve everybody in the conversation. So I love the work that you're doing, and I'm happy that even for Asel, I'm dragging my brother into it because he's also learning things.
Yeah, fantastic.
Okay. So let's talk about, all right, I was looking at the time. Okay. So let's talk about how you've spoken about how the workplace has not been designed around women's natural rhythms, which is, I mean, of course it's not. So how do you really think to say a cycle? Like, how can workplaces who want to be more inclusive and supportive of women adapt the way they set up their workplace?
That is it's a big question, and I think we're still learning. I do feel like it's something that needs to be championed from the top. So, I'll give you an example. When I lead my designers, I often know where they are in their cycle. Most people, once they get to know me, are pretty open about their cycle and they share a lot of information, which is awesome. And so I also know that if a woman is coming up to her period, I probably won't, and I have like a big creative task, I won't give it to her then. Um, if I have like a deep think project, I will give it to her then. Then I know that, when she moves into her follicular phase, she's becoming very creative, and that's when I will give it to her. In her luteal phase, she's much more productive. So that's when I would give like much more administrative tasks or tasks like organizing or project management around the actual whatever the delivery is. So it's hard though, because I don't think that there should be any laws that are like leaders should understand where women are in their cycle. But there should be a respect for the fact that women's bodies work in 28-day cycles and there are 4 phases to it. And so having deadlines that are constantly like every 4 days or things like that is really unnaturally aligned with her cycle. And no matter what is going to cause stress and burnout, which eventually costs your team and your company a lot of money. So
Yeah.
starting to build in timelines that look at like monthly deliveries and things like that is really good. And then allowing the women to understand during my ovulatory phase, that might be when I go and get research done and I organize all my meetings with the different departments, or I do consumer feedback, for example, because I know that during my period, I really don't feel like talking to other people. I'm going to go really inward at that time. So there's a education piece around an empowerment piece, allowing employees to to understand their 4 phases and
Mhm.
how they can organize their work in line with those 4 phases to deliver the best work for themselves, even because it feels lovely. And then there's a leadership job to be done, which is acknowledging that the women are moving in monthly rhythms and providing monthly deadlines instead of like consistent weekly, for example, deadlines.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that. So hopefully we are able to build systems around how we can support women better in the workplace. I think this also reminds me of Alicia because she's also building around cycle syncing and she's targeting more of businesses. And something that I really loved about the conversation I had with her was where she talked about the cycle like with seasons. She compared it with seasons, and then there's periods where you are high productivity and there's periods where your body has been designed naturally to encourage rest. And it's important for women to acknowledge that, like, you don't have to be very productive every single day, that your body also encourages you to rest, recharge, and then go after everything again. So I really like what you're doing and how you're able to even carry it along with your employees. So that's really cool stuff.
Thank you. I will note, and I say this to my friends, on the first day of my period, it's almost always a rule that I do nothing. And I
Mhm.
think Nepal actually champions this as a country that on a woman's period, I don't do anything. I have no meetings, totally 100% rest. But I can tell you that by doing that on the first day of my period, my productivity and my output that following month is exceptionally higher if I had not have just rested on that day.
Mm,
And so I yeah, I do recommend that. It is interesting though, because as you look at higher and higher performers, like I remember watching an interview with Katy Perry, and I think she was like, I just did that entire live show on my period. And I'm not at that, level of anywhere near that level of performance. And so I'm excited about where we can go. I'd love to have conversations with people like that to be like, have you got yourself to a state where you can do 10-hour performances on your period and it's like all just flowing through you and it's
mhm,
incredible. Moment, that's what's working for me. So again, it's just an invitation for the woman to look at her body's signs and where she is at that and go, was that damaging or actually did it bring out the best, most authentic version of me? Because
mhm.
authenticity is the highest vibrational frequency for a human being, and it's the most attractive, it's the most conducive to success. And so you want to be constantly, again, having that picking up the phone with your body and having a chat rather than a like, is it inconvenience? Is it the wrong timing? And understanding what she needs in order to show up as your best self on that day.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective. Okay. So we are headed towards the end of the podcast and it's been incredible. So I think I need to find another adjective because I'm overusing incredible these days. Anyway, if you could leave one message with I think you've left several messages, but let's say you leave just the one that you want a woman to not forget for the duration of this podcast. What would that be?
Your body is a masterpiece of nature.
Mhm,
And if you are experiencing any challenges with it, it is trying to talk to you. So have the conversation with love. Take space with love to understand what she's trying to show you and then seek out options. You always have a choice. If you go to the doctor and he says, your only choice is surgery, I just don't agree with it. I believe that we always have options. And I wish that when I was younger, I knew that I had options to try. I was told you can have the laparoscopies and you can sort of fix your diet over here. Those options were not given to me in equal weight at all.
mhm,
So I believe seek out options. If there's one woman on the internet, I found one woman on the internet who was having depressive tendencies by being on her Mirena IUD. That was enough for me to be like, okay, I think it's doing the same for me once a month. And as soon as I had that Mirena device taken out, I never had it again, even though no one will admit to the fact that the Mirena device does that. So I just believe that you have choice and that your body honestly is a masterpiece of nature. It has been evolving for hundreds of thousands of years. If you think that you know better, that's your ego speaking. So like just take a little bit of a seat and listen to your body and then try and find options for it to heal.
thank you so much for sharing that. Okay. So what's next for you and her for? I think you already gave like a sneak peek. So you can talk about maybe a bit more more extensively.
Yeah. So next is I am launching a program, a 3-month program that empowers women to understand their endometriosis and tackle the symptoms, um, really achieve meaningful results within a 3-month period. I have united hormone testing with gut microbiome testing with dietitians and more, mindfulness practices just for women in a very consolidated, beautiful, very affordable 3-month program so that I can help as many women as possible ease their endometriosis symptoms naturally, um, scale.
Mhm.
So I've gone and looked at all of the different holistic practices that are offered. I've united them together and I will be launching that in the next couple of months. So I invite everyone, if you're interested, I do a weekly newsletter. Please go to her4.com, her4.com, sign up to the newsletter, and I would love to help as many women as possible if they're dealing with the PMS symptoms or the hormone challenges. But most importantly, the next stage is definitely helping women with endometriosis.
Okay. Incredible. I love you again. Awesome. I will leave it.
You're incredible,
The
Gigi. You're incredible. Remember that.
incre-
do. And I see so much of you because, I was the same age as you. I moved to the other side of the world. I taught myself a fluent language. I didn't know anyone in that country. I was super curious. I was building things. It takes so much courage to do that. Like you have incredible courage and your curiosity is like leading you along this path, which is phenomenal. So yeah, just keep doing you, girl. It's amazing.
Thank you so, so much. I needed that today.
Oh, you can call me anytime.
Thank you. So next, my favorite question in the entire podcast. No, like all the questions are, but this is
Wow.
it's a personal one for me. What would you tell 15-year-old you?
What would I what?
Tell 15-year-old Catherine.
You're beautiful. I feel like when I was 15, I was teased. I did not fit in. I was a nerd. I had Harry Potter glasses. I, yeah, I hung out with guys a lot more because I didn't like gossiping. I wasn't really interested in that. I was always interested in what was being invented, what new music was coming out. So I think I would just tell her that she's beautiful and to just embrace that authenticity because it's that authenticity that has given me a very unique life. I've learned a fluent language in my 20s. I've been on international stages. I've raised international capital. I've built companies. I've invented products. And that was because I just followed my own intuition and heart. And I let go of like what the common group was doing. And at the time, it was really difficult and lonely. And now people are coming to me for advice because I did it differently. So the being different is cool. And being different is actually really beautiful. And so, yeah, I think I'd just tell her that
Thank you so, so much for sharing that. I love how when I ask this question, I'm asking it from the place like fun, and then people usually give this like very emotional responses. I think it's nice to like reflect all the way back and seeing how far you've come.
I, I totally agree. And I think that I've done a lot of interviews and you have been very thoughtful in the questions that you have.
Thank you so.
So, it's a testament to you and your respect for different people and their time, and it's going to serve you really well. So, embrace that.
Thank you. Okay. And final question, although I think you already responded to it in a way, but for people who want to learn more about you, your work, her for any other projects you have going on, where can they find them?
So, there's probably three locations. The first one is to go to her4.com and sign up to my newsletter. The second one is if you're on LinkedIn and you want to connect with me on there from a work perspective, it's just Katherine Maree Pace. And also on Instagram, it's Katherine Maree Pace. So Catherine, yeah, Marie, Maree, Pace, Pace. Feel free to connect, share your story with me. I'm always looking for new collaborations and new insights. So please don't be a stranger. I love connecting the dots across the world. So I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'll include all the links in the description and the show notes for the listeners. Thank you so much,
Beautiful.
Kat. It's been wonderful having you on the podcast.
It's been amazing. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited for you.
Thank you so much.